Three, two, one, and we are live. Welcome and thank you to everyone for joining Inside Enduro's first live podcast with me, your host, James Stearns. Please like and subscribe if you dig what's going on. Today we are brought to you by Inside Enduro Media. You can check us out and follow us on Instagram or Facebook or on our webpage at insideenduro.com. With no further ado, please welcome our guest and my friend, Joe Wasson, Factory Beta Off-Road Racer.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good, man. How was your trip over this morning?
It was pretty exciting, actually. There's a lot of construction going on, so I took the adventure bike so I could take some of the back roads, and it was pretty fun. It made for a good little rip this morning.
Right on. Right. Well, the air's fresh out there this morning. I know that for sure.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cold.
Right on. So you've had a couple busy weeks, kind of kicking off the new year. I see you knocked out a win at the Amra Buckeye Hare Scrambles as a little warm-up.
Yeah, that one's always a fun one to get the year started because it's on like January 6th, so it's just it's a good race to get warmed up, kind of shake out the bike, and get loosened up for the national rounds.
Cool. And then the national round, the first one came soon after that with I believe that was Prairie City.
Yeah. Prairie City was 2 weeks later, and it was definitely a race to remember for sure. It was complete mud. I mean, it rained all week before, and it made for some awesome racing.
Yeah, I saw, with a couple of the pictures, I didn't make it out to that one, but, pretty much everybody looked the same shade of gray-black.
Yeah, pretty much after the first lap, I mean, everybody was just covered in mud. I mean, the bikes were just caked. Everything was just covered in mud. So it was a really tough race for, like goggle conditions. It rained, and then it would get kind of sunny, and then there was huge puddles. So you really had to make sure that your goggles were on point, and so you could finish the race because, if you can see, you can go faster, so that was key.
Yeah. I mean, so as far as the goggles went, so you were able to pretty much manage it. So you had goggles on the entire time.
Yeah. I actually set my goggles up with 14 tear-offs, and I had 7 on the right and 7 on the left. And the reason I kind of did that was to know kind of where I was at with tear-offs. And that way I could kind of judge my pit situation. So after I got done with the ones on the left, I knew I was halfway through, so I could kind of time it to when I needed to pull into the pits.
That's actually a really good idea. I've never thought about setting them up opposing like that because you try to count in your mind like, all right, how many do I got left? Because once that last one's off, you're fucked.
Yeah, you don't really know. You start pulling tear-offs, you're like, oh, I got 1 or 2 left, but you actually only have 1 left, and you pull it, and then you get a mud puddle to the face, you're done. Yeah. But that's kind of just like a little strategy to just kind of remind you where you're at. And so it really helped me out because I actually I had to pit 1 lap early because I was out of tear-offs, and it worked out. I pitted twice, and it seemed to be a really good strategy for me.
No, that's a super cool idea. And actually, I can't say that I would have thought of that. Usually you get in the battle and you're just like, I got to go forward. And everyone's, either chasing or you're chasing. And then now you think about it, like you said, if you're going to go fast and you're with other guys that are going fast, you got to have vision. You can't be taking, face shots of mud and rock.
No, yeah, and if I can see and you can't, I'm gonna go faster than you for sure.
No.
And I kind of learned that from just kind of listening to people that have been there before me. My team manager Rodney Smith, he's a really knowledgeable guy, and so I kind of just try to pick his brain and and see what strategies work for him. He's got 5 GNCC titles, so he's obviously done something right in his career, and I just try to learn all those things and just kind of put all this basically techniques I learned and put them together for what works for me.
Heck yeah. I mean, it makes sense, on you really think about it by taking that extra time to pit, if your goggles are close to being hosed and you avert losing your goggles and then having to ride slow for half a lap or 3/4 of a lap or hell 20 miles.
Yeah.
That makes a massive difference.
Oh yeah, like half a lap with 20-minute lap times. If you're going slow because of vision problems, you're gonna lose 4 or 5 minutes easily. And in a race like this where there's a lot of good competitors, you can't afford that. So you have to make sure your timing is impeccable.
So I gotta ask, what goes through your mind when you look at like 2 football fields length of basically like a swamp donkey duck pond? And I've been around you enough to kind of see how you ride, where it's pretty much just like full blast. Like, what goes through your mind? Like, where the 6-foot hole is, or I'm gonna go off here to the left and just like pin it and hope that I end up where I want to be. Because I'll tell you, I roll up to some of that stuff when I see it. You're just first is like, oh God.
Yeah, and that was the thing with it, because it was a hare scrambles, so we did 8 laps on the course, and there was probably about 10 really good mud fields that you had to cross. And each time, you would go to the right or, you'd go to the left. Well, if you'd go to the right, 200 bikes would follow your line to the right. So the next lap, you'd have to go to the left. And it made it really tough because, you're going through like 1 foot tall grass with these huge mud holes. And you're just like leaning back and giving it gas and hoping your bike doesn't hit a big sinkhole and you go over the bars or something. It was like every time was like hope and pray, that you made the right choice going through there, because if you mess up and you get stuck, you're basically going to get just stuck in a mud hole, and your race is probably going to be pretty close to over after that.
Yeah, danger.
Yeah.
That stuff's so sketchy. So yeah, like you said, like, you drop that bike in the mud, and almost when it's that bad, it's like suction.
Yeah, I actually, through one of the little mud hole crossings, my rear end kind of slid out a little bit, and I ended up laying it over. And when I went to pick it up, it probably had like 50 extra pounds of mud on it, and it felt like picking up an adventure bike, So I really had to like regroup and like, get in like perfect position and squat the bike up, just so I could get it up. And it was like, oh my goodness, don't drop this thing again. It's too heavy to pick up.
Oh, shit. Yeah, and I would imagine, too, when the bike goes down, your heart rate spikes.
Yeah.
Because you're like, all right, I'm not moving forward now.
Yeah, and you just go into, like, total panic mode, and so you really just got to relax and just pick it up the right way and save as much energy as possible, because, a 3-hour race, every bit of energy you can save is huge.
Cool. Yeah, I had one. It was interesting. We were in Wyoming, and it was just basically the start of the race. We're heading to the first special test, which was, you could drive a golf cart, there was no racing. And I watched a guy in front of me. We're about 100 yards from the start, and it had rained a ton the night before. And he goes through this pretty, just a puddle, really, a big one, but he goes through just fine. And I went 6 inches to the left to where he went, water over the bars. So my tearaways, everything wet from the inside and out.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an extra set at that point. So I started out with hoping to have 14 tear-offs, starting out with nothing.
None.
No goggles. Everything's wet. Everything's ruined. And tough start.
Yeah, it makes for a long day for sure.
Hell yeah. So now you got to the top of the podium for that one, first round.
So basically, my plan from the start was basically to, I wanted to come out of the gate, and I knew it was going to be really muddy and slick. I raced the race 2 years before, and I didn't have very good luck at it. So I kind of knew what I was getting into going into it. So I was like, my strategy was to ride the first 2 laps and just kind of get the course dialed in, not try to overexert myself, and just ride smooth for the first couple laps and get the track dialed in. And basically that's what I did. I was second off the start, and a kid from Australia, Callum Norton, he just took off like a rocket. And usually I would just try to like keep that speed, but I was like, nope, I'm just gonna hold my pace and and get smooth. And that's exactly what I did. And 2 laps later, he ended up bobbling, and I was able to get by him. And we had a couple good battles with one of my teammates, Max Gersten, and another kid, Justin Bonita. We battled for about 4 laps, and then finally I was able to get in the lead and secured the lead from there out. Once I got into the lead, I just felt myself putting a little bit of time each lap. So I knew I was in a good position, so I didn't do anything silly. I just picked really good lines and rode smooth and tried to stay consistent the whole way through, and that's basically what I did, and it worked out to a podium finish.
Well, cool. Obviously, I mean, the top of the podium is the best result possible, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's good stuff. Well, because I'd known before in 2016 you had actually won the National Hare and Hound Association 250 Pro Class Championship.
Yeah, that was really my first year, like going after pro racing. I took a pretty big break from about the time I was 12 to 21. I didn't ride dirt bikes at all, just because I kind of wanted to get into other stuff. And finally I picked dirt biking back up, and I went racing again. And the first year that I went and chased the Pro Series, I won every 250 Pro race except for the first round. I got second. And then I won the Idaho Off-Road Series. I won the 250 Expert in the Utah Series. And I won some select Nevada rounds. And it was just a really good year for me. Everything just kind of was flowing together, and it was an awesome year.
At that time, did you have much support? Obviously probably not factory support.
No, definitely not factory support. There was a local bike shop, Cycle City and Mountain Home. They helped me out with a YZ250 two-stroke, and I got 2 of them, and it was just basically me and my dad running off the knowledge that my dad had from when my brother was trying to chase the series. So it was basically just kind of all or nothing. I put everything on the line. I was at the time I was working at an asphalt plant, and my boss, he kind of gave me an ultimatum. He was like, "Are you gonna be here on the weekends to work, or are you gonna go racing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm doing really good racing. I'm not gonna give up my dreams to run an asphalt plant." So I was like, we kind of just had to split ways at that point. And I started building swimming pools on the side and racing every weekend. And it was tough for sure. There was months where I was talking to my wife, and she's like, "I don't know how we're gonna pay the rent." And I was like, "We just gotta just figure it out. Hopefully it'll work out." And finally in November I got a call from Beta USA, and that was the ticket. It finally worked out.
So yeah, I mean, the short time that I've known you, there's definitely some grit. You have some grit in you. So I always wonder, where that came from. You see today, as I'm a bit older, you wonder, it seemed like in earlier times, there's a lot more grit out there. And then, you have the younger people, and, people go on about, the kids aren't as tough and they aren't as gritty. And you start to really kind of worry about what's happening in our society from my age, because you're kind of like, well, holy shit, is this the future, of our country? And then fortunately, there's bright spots. I meet guys like you that I think you're just 25, and you've made this journey, and you've told me a little bit about your upbringing, and obviously, you're a gritty kid. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't life at the country club. And you gutted it out. You're still gutting it out, and and you're seeing the payoff.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of had a different upbringing. I was really an independent kid, and I kind of liked to forge my own path. And I made a lot of bad decisions growing up, and at the time, it might not have been the best thing, but overall, as an adult now, I've got a pretty good head on my shoulders now. I learned a lot from the mistakes I made, and I've had to have a lot of grit. Me and my wife, we had a baby when we were 18 and 19 years old, and I had to figure out how to support the family, and so I really had to man up at an early age, and it's made me who I am today. I have a lot of fight, and I don't give up. When I set my mind to something, I'm going to get it done.
No, that's good. That's good to hear. We definitely need more of it, for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good quality to have. To be able to be determined and just put your mind to something and get it done.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that's definitely changed in sport in the last 20 years. Is at one time just talent itself was typically enough to get the job done, or you do really well. And it's definitely changed that for whatever elite level sport you're looking at, guys are not only talented, but they have to have the work ethic, the diet, the fitness, and basically unless they're just a crazy phenom. But even those guys, you see them step up a level and they're like, holy crap, need to double down, whether it's, their fitness training, their diet, and basically in the drive, you have to put everything together to get to the top step, which I think's pretty interesting. And it's a big ask of the athletes, with the competition, et cetera. But it just gets, as the level gets higher, everything else has to come with it if you're going to be there.
Oh yeah. Definitely, like, sports over like the last 10 years have really like definitely taken a turn for the extreme levels. There's so many great athletes out there that just push the limits, and it's getting to a point to where it's just, people are getting better and better and better and better. And, you have to really be on top of your game. Everything's like kind of come down to a science. Like you said, nutrition, exercise program, training program, the mechanics of the bikes, just everything that goes into it. It's not just, some tough, fast dudes racing each other anymore. It's turned into, like an art, like science, basically, you have to put the whole package together to win now. It's not just go out there and wing it. You have to have your stuff together.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And for me, I mean, that's what really kind of makes it interesting is when it becomes an art, when, if you can, a lot of great riders out there, lots of them.
Tons.
And I think there's becoming more and more as, I mean, you look at it from what I call the enduro side, we're probably in the best riding time there ever was in the world. We're dealing with bikes with extraordinary technology, extraordinary suspension, tire companies, different compounds, all the bells and whistles of making a smoother ride, a safer bike, a faster bike. And then you have people pushing, the envelope as well. And, so with that, it's just a great time to be in the motorcycle, whether it's moto, enduro scene, whatever. There's just a lot to offer.
Yeah, definitely. You look back, like, just for me, like, one of the series I race is the National Hare and Hound series. And it's been going on for a long time. And, a hare and hound race is difficult for anybody. But you look back into like the 70s and stuff, and they were racing these old like bull tacos and stuff across the desert. It's like, oh my gosh, how did these guys ride those bikes that long and that fast over that stuff? It's amazing how far the technology's come over the years.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think I would, it's cool to look at the past, you make it wonder because, you see I think there's some, like the 90s. I think that's a thing that's going on. Like the 90s were the best years of motocross, with the Jeremy McGrath and a lot of hot pinks, and a lot of zebra.
Yeah. Yeah, the old retro gear.
Yeah, zebra patterns and, and just all the fanfare, they were kind of like rock stars. And then you go further behind that and you see the pictures of, I think the Penton engine dirt bikes with, naked girls checking, the enduro, checkpoints with hot naked girls.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that doesn't go on right now. So,
Right.
Maybe that would be all right, you
Yeah.
know, but, you know, overall, you know, it's a great time.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it'd be interesting your opinion, you know, from what I'm seeing just in the enduro scene and just general riding scene is that, you know, with the advent of YouTube and just the way the industry is going, there's a lot more education available. So a lot more information flow. And as people have access to this, they're able to better their riding. You know, compared to before, you know, if you didn't have a dad that was an old racer or an uncle who was a racer, or, you know, some friends that, you know, wanted to, you know, show you the way, you're kind of hosed. I mean, you're just kind of out there winging it, like trying to give it as much throttle you can with keeping it out of the dirt and upside down as much as you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically, you know, that's kind of what I did. You know, my dad, he grew up racing, you know, taught my brothers how and stuff. And, you know, we owned a motocross track and stuff. And like, you know, there is a lot more technology out there. There's a lot, like, you know, with social media and stuff, you know, there's a lot more tools to kind of get you to where you want to be. You know, there's, like, you know, like versus like what you're saying, you know, doing it on your own and stuff, you know, that's tough. But now there's a lot more resources you can do to kind of get the knowledge, you know, of the stuff that you need to have before you go racing. You know, like that stuff's wasn't always available, you know. So it's definitely different now.
No doubt, no doubt. I think pretty much everyone can agree as you become more proficient, you get better on a dirt bike, the funner it is. I mean, when you go out and everything isn't scary, you know, you start playing with the terrain, you start, you know, kind of the fluffy, you know, you get to interpret the terrain.
Yeah.
Like you get to decide, you know, what you want to do with it. Like, hey, this looks cool. I can blip off of this, you know, I can loft over this. And, you know, and you kind of start playing with the bike where, you know, when you're in that beginning stage or the earlier stages, I mean, it's just a war of survival, like, you know, and I think that's where people get lost is, you know, you go riding with a bunch of guys, like, let's just go backwood. I'm from Montana, you know, so you go out with a group of guys. Well, most dudes just don't want to be last.
No.
So
no, you don't want to be the last one in the pack for sure.
So if you got to fight, paddle, push, sweat, you don't give a shit.
No.
Man, you're just like doing whatever you can to, like, you know, to move forward till you're exhausted and you fall over.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're just going for it.
Yeah.
You know, so like in that situation, like, you know, it's like your friends may not be too forthcoming with why they're a little bit faster than you, because nobody wants to, you know, move back in the pack, right? You know, it's like, well, he's got to learn it. And you always hear, more seat time. You just need more seat time. And I always, you know, I kind of get in some arguments with some older guys because I'm just kind of like, well, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean it's bullshit? You know, seat time, that's what makes you better. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it to you. Seat time with utilizing correct techniques.
Exactly.
Now, if you're just doing shit techniques over and over and over and just galvanizing that, it's like, yeah, you'll become a little better of not stacking it up every day, but you're not going to see, you know, the long-term big gains that, you know, people dream about. Yeah,
no, definitely. You can put like a lot of seat time in, and like you said, you might get really good at it. But I kind of, you know, it was one like, so I was really fast naturally, but that doesn't mean I was really fast correctly.
Yeah.
And you know, about 6 months ago, I had to like relearn how to ride, because the way I was riding was only going to get me to the point to where I was. That's what I'd been doing, and I was kind of at the fastest I could go doing it how I was doing it. So literally, you know, I just basically asked help from another rider. I was like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Like, you know, and he was like, hey, just work on this, 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 and this. And basically, you know, some of the most basic techniques, I practiced, you know, 4 or 5 days a week. And, you know, over the last 6 months, it's really helped me out. So, you know, I turned my old habits and techniques into something new. And, I've progressively gotten faster over the last 6 months. So, seat time's huge, but doing the seat time correctly with the correct techniques is even bigger.
No doubt. I definitely agree. Coming from other sports, I was fortunate to reach some, fairly high levels. And I think sometimes where I got held up was exactly that, is like when the technique of what you were doing, was kind of arrested development, if you will. It's like you got to the point where like, hey, things are good, but to get to that next level, and a lot of that is a tear down and a rebuild of what's currently going on to kind of retrench and come back. So by utilizing that, I kind of took a step back as I got involved in the moto world and go, all right, going out and banging out trails is great. I enjoy that. But if you want to pick up, to aspire to higher levels, technically breaking things down and really working on something that's kind of been coined as, mastery of skill, of figuring out how and why and what, and then implementing it, and then seeing that. And it can be frustrating because, coming down here, I've been rocking a lot of turn tracks with you guys, and that's my first time. And, and like just having a bit of a battle with it of, the harder you try to go, usually the more it screws you.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's tough to do it right. And, that's where you have to really break it down. And, turn tracks, especially, like if you're not doing them correctly, you can only go so fast. And it's really frustrating in the beginning because, you're out here with some of the best guys in the industry, and it's like you're getting beat by 30 seconds. It's like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm going as fast as I possibly can, and it's like, well, wait a minute, slow down. Are you braking correctly? Are you in the right position? Are you looking around the corner? Are you doing all these things right? And it's like, well, yeah, I think so. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, are you actually doing it right? And that's when you really have to like have some self-analysis and, and kind of be truthful with yourself. Like, what are you actually doing wrong? What do you need to improve on? And, that's what I've been working on the last few months, just, making sure I'm doing everything correctly. And, that's just, it's huge,
Well, it's got to be key. I mean, any sports, at a high level, you're definitely looking at seeing, everyone has trainers, whether it's the Alden Bakers of the world, in the moto industry, the different schools, different training, all those types of things, to help put it together. And that's kind of the path that I've taken as well, is trying to source out, like, all right, if I want to do this, who are kind of the legitimate, resources, that are, legitimately understand and can legitimately, profess. And it's funny about what you're talking about, the training. There's a old guy I did some trials work with back east in Tennessee. His name's Charlie Roberts. And I think he's been teaching trials for 30 years. And he simply said, he's like, if no one's watching, it's not practice. Because you can think that you're doing everything that you saw in the YouTube video, but he's like, I guarantee you, like, if someone who knows what they're looking for watches it, they're like, dude,
you're way off, man. You're way off.
You were way off. Like, well, didn't I do that? They're like, no, actually, when you're going up it, you were already abandoning the bike.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, no, I wasn't. And you're like, yeah, you were.
Yeah, and that's just like some of the things that you don't realize if you're just if like if you don't know, like I never knew that I wasn't going around the corner right, like I didn't have my my butt on the corner of the seat, like just simple things like I wasn't doing, and I couldn't figure out why I'd lose the front end all the time, and it was really frustrating. But when you really analyze it, that's when you like learn what you're doing wrong. And sometimes like taking videos of yourself, doing stuff like that, like it can really help you out to see how you're actually riding.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, and it's funny, as it progresses, you change some things. Like I was always like, hey man, you got to have new tires, I mean, like if you don't have new tires, you don't have enough grip to get around the corners, etc. And it's funny as you pick up your game. Yeah, new tires are always great, but it's maybe not the reason why you're not getting around the corner fast and why you're losing the front end. You're losing the front end not because, oh, this tire is a little better than this tire. Like, you're losing the front end because your technique is wrong.
Exactly. Tires are huge. Don't get me wrong, but usually, like, I practice, until my tires are pretty much completely gone. And you can still go around a corner correctly if your tires are bald. You might slide a little bit, but if you do it in the right technique and you have the right pressure and the right spots, you can still go around the corner. It's all about technique.
Oh yeah, and that's changed too. I think that's one of the things we like to focus on is, it's cool having all the bling on the bikes and the bikes look sweet and there's so many aftermarket things to make you a better rider, allegedly, and all of those things. But as you start looking at the top pro bikes, what was surprising, never a dull moment in live podcasts. We're 30 some minutes into it, full power outage, everything went dead, the entire facility dead. What the fuck? So, hey, here we go.
Trial and error.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I don't know how to deal with, whether it's a natural disaster or what, but anyways, it's like, might as well get these things out so it works out.
Arizona natural disaster.
That's right, Arizona natural disaster. So I think where we left off, it was interesting. We're talking about, developing skills on bikes and as far as the gear that's out there and the different bike components and, and all of these things. And definitely interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for, if people want to put a little bit more of their money into their education than bike parts, probably go a long ways. Do you think?
Bike parts are kind of, like, some things are good and some things are bad. You can, a lot of the times, the factories and stuff, they do a pretty good job of, building their bikes. Sometimes, you can almost hinder your progress by adding a lot of these things on your bikes. Some of them are very important too. But I guess it's all about figuring out what works best for you. If you don't really realize what, how the bike should feel or what it does, you change a bunch of things around, you ultimately change how the bike rides too. Figuring that stuff out is huge, and I've been doing a lot of testing with a lot of different stuff, different styles of brake rotors and different gearing, different handlebar heights, just a bunch of stuff like that, and trying to figure out what works best for me. And I think I found a pretty good setup. So I've been riding the same setup for a little bit now, and I think I like it.
Excellent. Yeah, I've kind of come along the same journey. I've put on a lot of additional parts that they do this, they do that, and you kind of find out that, it's not really what I was missing.
Yeah. No, exactly. So one of the recent changes I made to my bike was we ended up putting on a metal skid plate, and at first I was kind of skeptical about the metal skid plate because it's really heavy, but for the Hare and Hounds, there's a lot of really high speed, sections. So I almost feel like the metal skid plate added some weight lower down in the bike, and it really stabilized it out at high speeds. It feels a lot more stable, at 75 miles an hour. So some of those things where you think a heavy aluminum skid plate would be hindering, almost I feel like helped my performance on it. So just playing around with different things like that, can go a long ways.
Wow, man, I gotta honestly say I would have never thought about that. at 75 miles an hour. And then now I'm starting to think like, all right, so when does Joe and guys like, the super fast guys, when do they start using like downdraft whale tails on their bike? Because, they're going 80, 90 plus, and they're like, no, I need more downdraft, man. I need to get pushed down to the earth because, the airfoils I'm starting to like take off for, very long periods of time off the ground.
Yeah. It's crazy though. Like, you don't think about those things until you test them out, like when you're going across the California desert, fifth gear wide open, on a 450 or, 430 as I ride, you don't realize it, but, you have to have your stuff dialed in like 100%. There's no room for error. Like if you have a get off at fifth gear wide open across the desert, I don't think the chances of it going well are going to be very high, So like I want to do everything I can to make sure my bike works 100% at that speed.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine there's a, obviously you just have to have kind of, I don't know if it's a personality or the attitude or will to want it to take up to that notch. And I think, you've heard me say a couple times, and I don't think I really say it to like try to just go, I'm not at that speed. For me, it's really factual. Like I have on a GoPro where we're going in the sand and, at first I'm getting passed by guys, like it seems like I'm standing still, but I'm in fifth, sixth gear with a KTM, like 3/4 pinned, but not fully pinned. And guys are whipping by me. And then I get to the point where, all right, I'm getting a little more confidence. So I start going a little bit faster, actually start passing some people. And I even have on my GoPro, I'm like, why are we going so fast? It's just like, this doesn't seem right, and you must have that mindset that, obviously there's a confidence and skill, because if it was a type of deal where, say I was going so fast and, I don't have arm pump, I'm in full control of the bike. So it's not like I'm not skilled to turn the throttle a little further. There's just something in my mind saying, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that kind of has to do with self-preservation. I think my screw might be a little bit loose in the self-preservation mode. It takes a different style of person to be able to, hold it pinned across whoops, at fifth gear. Like, I've always, since I've been a little kid, I've never been scared to hold it wide open, and, I learned a really big lesson in New Mexico, in 2017, because I was not scared to hold it wide open, and, ultimately it bit me. So you got to know when you can go fast and when you can't go fast, because, like I said, mistakes at that speed are, it's not good. So like, I don't know if, so in New Mexico, I basically tore my hand off, and,
so please describe tear your hand off, because, I have a background in the medical industry. I've dealt with orthopedics for a couple decades, and that's just kind of my, background with, also doing some writing and other things as well. But, I'll have people go, oh, I broke my shoulder. And I'm like, well, what does that exactly mean? Because there's a lot of different types of broken shoulders, and what one might consider a broken shoulder, I'm like, no, you didn't break your shoulder. But please describe, because...
So I guess the technical term for the injury that I had was a transscaphoid perilunate dislocation. Basically, the ulna and the radius bones came completely out of the bottom of my wrist and dislocated the wrist joint and broke the scaphoid. The bones were like completely exposed, and so
you were looking at, for anybody who doesn't know, that's basically having a convertible hand. So your hand comes back, and the dislocation is your whole wrist complex moves north, and your ulna and radius shoot
straight out the
basically
bottom.
Out where your wrist used to be.
Yeah.
Which makes them like white, bony nubs, a fair amount of blood.
Yeah, they're more like red, muscly bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
So dirt and all that stuff.
Dirt, sand, bone, muscle tissue, the whole nine.
So I got to say, I mean, obviously, when things like that happen so quick, not to get off on a tangent, like you just, every time I hear it with the super fast guys, whether it's like Toby Price, for example, like you have him describe every one of his wrecks. He had no idea. I mean, because he's going so fucking fast that he hit so hard, he knocked himself out. He didn't remember how it happened, what he hit. He just wakes up and he's fucked.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's just like that fast. Like,
yeah.
Most of my stuff, when I'm falling over, it's like watching a slow tree go over. It's like I get to think about things before I hit the ground. Like, yeah. And that's it. Where you guys are like, whip, done.
Unfortunately, I kind of wish that I would have got knocked out or, went into shock, but I was fully conscious the whole way through. I remember every single detail of it, as far as like I coming off the little sand dune that I jumped off of to being in the air thinking, oh shit, this is not going to be good. And thinking about grabbing a handful of throttle, hoping that, like when I landed that I'd just kind of blow through the bank and it'd buff out, but it didn't buff out. I just went from basically 60 miles an hour to stop, and my wrist was the weak link. And I remember flipping over the bike, landing in the trail, and thinking that oh crap, I'm second overall at a start of a Hare and Hound, and there's 200 bikes coming at me. I better get out of the way. And I just scrambled up out of the way, and I tried taking my helmet off, and nothing, my hand wouldn't work. I was like, this is weird. I'm trying to undo the helmet strap and it's not working.
With nubs.
With my fingers, and they're not working. And so I kind of just set my arm out of the way and took it off with my other hand. And as soon as I looked down after I took my helmet off, I was like, oh crap, this is not good. And instant reaction was fight or flight. I tried to put my wrist back in, and then it was just, that's when the pain and everything set in, and basically I just grabbed it and wrapped it up. And I was kind of bummed out that nobody stopped for me. Thinking back on it, I was like, well, I was standing up, I was off to the side of the trail, and I wasn't doing anything. I was just standing there holding my arm. So, people probably thought I was all right. And finally I was like, nobody's going to stop for me. I got to flag somebody down. And finally I got somebody to stop, and, then they went back and got help. But, those things, and especially in off-road racing, the people that you're racing with, they're your first responders, they're the closest thing that they're the first people that are going to come up on you, the closest people that are going to help you. A lot of the times, Hare and Hounds, you're 40 miles away from the pits, so off-road, you really have to be a good sportsman and, look out for your fellow competitors. At the end of the day, we're people, not racers. You gotta look out for each other, so I think that's what's kind of cool about the sport is it's really tight-knit like that, usually everybody looks out for each other and that kind of thing. So that's it's just kind of an important part of it that, I think people should know.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I've learned to appreciate that. I haven't been racing that long. And it's been a really quick progression coming up, but we had the unfortunate event at King of Motos a year or so ago where Taylor Robert and Cody Webb were shooting it out for the lead on the desert moto, and Taylor hit this basically unseen, basically a rock that was part of the earth, actually, that was still attached to the earth, that was in the sand, and just a real odd thing, I mean, he was in good form and laying it out, but it was just one of those things, kind of like yours, at that speed, when he hit it, there wasn't anything that was going to save you, no fault, that I could see in form or anything like that. and, you know, went down horrible injuries. I was one of the first, you know, 8, 9, 10 guys that, you know, came behind on that line, and we all stopped. You know, everybody stopped the race, except for Cody. But I think Cody is they were off to the side and didn't quite see what happened. They were neck and neck, and all of a sudden he dropped off a bit. And so I don't think Cody saw him at all, but, you know, we all stopped. And I remember Max Gersten was there, and, you know, and some other guys as well, and kind of made sure that Jimmy Lewis got there, and the helicopter was there. And it really kind of like, you know, made you think when, you know, essentially the whole race is stopped, and it's in the first 10 minutes. Yeah. And the rest of it is going kind of like, if you're willing to do it, full tilt across a desert. And I think I think I have it on my GoPro. I think Max said, he's like, I don't even feel like riding now.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like, you see something like that happen, you know, someone's really hurt, and you're just like, then you got to get yourself in a mindset like, well, that happened to somebody else, so I'm just going to pin it and hope for the best. You know, it's like, it's like, you know, kamikazes, you know, like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, pilot my plane into the next ship. You know, like, no, not so cool.
No, that stuff's like really tough. Like, that's where, you know, like, I feel like, you know, going through these injuries and being able to come back and to be able to let yourself loose again, it's a unique skill. You know, like, coming back from my injury, you know, where they told me that I could possibly lose my hand, and, you know, going back to being able to, you know, hold it wide open across the desert again, you know, that's just it's not normal, I guess. I don't know. Most people are like, why would you ever get back on a dirt bike? It's like, it's what I love, you know, like, I can't not do it just because of one accident. You know, I could stop racing and go home and get in my bed and get bit by a black widow and die. Like, you just,
if you're lucky,
if you're lucky, you know. So it's like, you just never know, you know. It's all about what, you know, the cards that you get dealt. So I'm not gonna not live my life, you know, doing the things I love just because of the what if. You know, what if I got hit by a car? You know, you just never know. So
yeah, no doubt, there's a lot to be said for that. I have a great appreciation for that. It's definitely that mental toughness. But, you know, as you lay it out and you think about it logically, whether you're taking chances in business, you know, where you fail and you financially fail, it's like, do you quit trying? You know, you fail and you lose all your money. And it's like, is that it? Like, I'm just gonna live in a box down by the river
and give up. Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's really not an option. But, you know, I guess in the motorcycle's even tougher. Really, any of the type of, you know, sports, whether it's, you know, athletics where you blow an ACL, and in the type of athletics, you know, football, rugby, where you really depend on it and you don't know what it will withstand. But there becomes a point where you got to take the governor off and you got to go full tilt and just see if the sucker holds.
Yeah.
But if you don't try, I mean, it's just like, you just sit around and go, well, I'd like to.
Yeah,
but,
like, you know, what if?
Yeah, but did you test it out? Like, well, no, I've never really tested it out. It's like, well, what if it did hold?
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Another thing that I always kind of think about in life is, you know, you listen to people that are, you know, older in their age, and they're like, oh, man, I wish I would have done that at your age. You know, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And I think to myself, like, okay, all these people say it. It's not just like 1, 2, 3 people. I've heard it from probably 50 people that are older than me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm at that age. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to, like, wake up when I'm, you know, 50 years old and say, man, I wish I would have got back on the bike.
Easy now. Easy on the ages.
Well, no, I'm just saying, you know, like, I wish, you know, like the pro window to be like a, you know, like a national champion, I think is pretty small. Like, you only have so much time to achieve that.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't want to look back and say I wish I would have done something. You know, I want to do everything I can now.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. I don't think you've heard me utter those statements.
No, not you in general.
There's only
you're
one.
far different from most people. But I just don't want to be that person, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, there are a lot of cliches, but again, it's life with no regret, and and life has its ups and downs. But at the end of the day, you got one shot at it, and you don't get any of the time back. And I can tell you don't get younger. Mm-mm. And so it's what you got today, and what you got tomorrow. We all have responsibilities typically, that we have to work with. But at the end of the day, I get so disappointed where, people cut their potential short, where they had the potential for it, or, had the potential, whatever it is, to just do it. And like, I don't know. I don't really care whether if it's, crocheting or blanket work or kung fu fighting. Like, if you got a passion and that's what you like, and you just like hit it full steam, like you're a gardener, but you got the most badass friggin' garden on the planet. Yeah. Friggin' good on you.
Get after it.
Because I would imagine those people aren't on social media banging like how the world sucks, and against this and against that, just, being basic bastards, It's like, if you're chasing your own program, whatever it is, I think it just takes away from the time of, of just being a shithead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Whatever it is, you got to chase it, like, I think whatever you're passionate about, do it. Don't wait.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no doubt from your story. I mean, that's walking the walk, right? I mean, you get hurt badly, or some of the other athletes, Taylor Robert, Toby Price, for example, that Ken Roxon, it's like, I'm not a huge motocross fan. I mean, I watch it because I think the guys are super talented, and I appreciate what they do, fitness and skill, but it's just something that I just don't really ride motocross that much. And particularly, I don't ride any supercross. But like, he came out and I remember some of the old videos, he kind of looked like he wanted to be this punk rocker type moto star with like black mascara on.
I remember seeing that in one of the moto movies.
And skinny jeans and, and the whatever.
Like a British punk rocker or something.
Like, oi, oi, oi.
Like Sex Pistols or something.
Sex Pistols, bloody oi, oi, oi.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who's this punk?
Right?
Like, what a jackass.
Yeah.
So I got to admit, I really didn't have any love for him. And, but then, I mean, very unfortunately, he goes through these 2 horrific injuries.
Yeah.
I lost count, 13, 14, 15 surgeries. And the guy has just like fought through it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the positives, of social media that's going on, is just because of that, a lot of us saw it, or saw him sweating it out, seeing him working out, and seeing him kind of why the whole world is going on without him, because the unfortunate reality, or the reality is, none of us are that important or irreplaceable.
Yeah.
So
no, that's huge.
So the whole world's basically hasn't even missed a tick. It's rotating, and everybody else is progressing with their game. And here he is, like, he's getting a little media coverage, but he's in the shadows. Yeah. And he has to fight out of that. And to see him fight out of that, sweat it out, climb his ass back up on a dirt bike and hit a supercross track, which, if you don't make your marks, is probably one of the most terrifying places to be on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's probably equal for me, like high-speed desert to that, but I think I would almost do that. I'd have an easier time just going a bit faster in the desert, personally, than hitting the supercross track.
Yeah.
I know the supercross track is more than imminent. Like, I'm going to eat the face of
They're not very forgiving.
of something huge. And so for me, that's really kind of made me a fan. Because he's like, I know, just, again, coming from the medical side, I know kind of what he's been through, and just how tough that would be. And you're another example, you've been through it, and some of these other guys, and they just don't quit. Cause I mean, it's in them to win. And I think that's a true testament of kind of how much you want it.
Exactly. I watched Ken Roxon's story, pretty much followed the whole thing, because we had the same injury basically, except I didn't mess up my elbow also, just more or less the wrist. So like, it was really it was encouraging for me to watch that and see him go through it and and be pretty successful with it. So I knew, in my mind that I could do it too. Because there was a lot of times where I doubted myself. Like, I didn't think that it was going to be possible. Like, I thought my career might be on the line. And that was like the worst thing, that for me that could ever happen. And so it was really, really inspiring to see his progress and see his positive attitude with the whole thing, because it really brought me a lot of strength. Like, it was a lot of helpful. Like, it's really helpful for me,
How long did it take you to kind of like, while you're going through that, like kind of roughly to heal to a point where you were starting to feel somewhat normal, to climbing on a bike and then starting to like kind of feel your feng shui flow?
So the injury happened February of 2017. I was pretty much laid up for like the next 4 months. And then in September, I raced a Hare and Hound, probably a little too early, but I did it. And then I raced one in November and made it through it. And it wasn't, my wrist wasn't right. Like, I was kind of just masking the pain with a lot of ibuprofen and, I was getting through. It wasn't good. I wasn't myself for sure. And I fired up the series for 2018. I got a couple cortisone injections, and I was going for it, because at that point in time, I felt like I was running out of options in time. So I raced 5 Hare and Hounds, and a Hare and Hound they're long, they're tough, rough courses, and people don't realize how much abuse the wrist takes on a motorcycle, and it's like one of the main pieces to the puzzle. And at the fifth Hare and Hound, halfway through it, my wrist hurt so bad that I couldn't hang on, and I ended up milking it to the finish line, and I think I finished like 50th or 60th. And at that time, I was like, I got to do something here. Like, I can't just keep masking the pain. And it turns out I had a little bit of an infection, and I had to go get that taken care of. And then I ended up getting stem cell injections, and that like was a complete game changer. 3 months later, it felt like my wrist was brand new. Still have a little bit of just pain, but nothing like that bad. And so at that point, I came back, and I came out with a second overall at a Hare and Hound, and then I won one of the local AMRA races, and then that was the end of the 2018 season. So at that point, I knew that like, okay, things are coming back. Like, I think this is the turning point. Like, I'm finally going to be able to race without a hindering wrist. And so I came out this year with a first overall at the local AMRA series, and then I just won the first round of the Western Hare Scrambles. So both races were pretty tough, and I didn't have any weak points. My body felt great. My my equipment felt 100%. So I have a lot of good traction going into this season. So
yeah, long road, man.
Yeah, almost like 18 months, I think.
Yeah, and again, in the big scheme of life, it doesn't seem like it's like that long. But like you said, when you're at a certain age and you have a certain window, and you're talking about factory sponsorship, each month probably feels like a lifetime of are you gonna keep on going?
Yeah, especially like like it was my first season with Beta USA, and and like the whole time I had like 100% support from those guys. Like they went above and beyond to take care of me and, reassure me that, my ride was secure and, like I couldn't be any more thankful for them. They were like a really stand-up company about the whole situation. And so, like, but in the back of my mind, like I knew that I had to get with it. I couldn't mess around forever because, the industry's small and there's a lot of riders that, want a factory ride. And so like I knew I had to perform sooner or later. And so I just did everything I could to get back to where, I was 100%.
Wow. Well, I have to say, everybody out there, big props to Factory Beta USA.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear those stories because, again, in the current narrative of the world, you hear, how horrible all the companies are, and how atrocious they are. And the fact that, they stuck behind you, and reassured you, had to help. But I get it too, like, again, being at high-level sports myself, like, it's like they're there to support, but there's a window.
Yeah, there's a timeline there, and they, like I said, man, they were stand up. They went above and beyond, like, what was in my contract, and they really took care of me. So, like I was 100% appreciative for that.
That's super cool. It's funny. That you mentioned the stem cells. My previous program, I had quite a bit of experience. We marketed and sold, a lot of different products for stem cell injections, and I've been in on a gazillion of them. We used them in total knee replacements, shoulder replacements, hip replacements, and then tennis elbow, some rotator cuff stuff as well. And not so much on the wrists, personally. So you got that done, obviously, in the United States?
Yeah. So what kind of basically turned me on to the stem cells, I talked to a few people. One guy had it done himself. Had it done in his shoulder and actually throughout his whole body. And he swore up and down by it. I was still a little skeptical, but my only other option was a wrist fusion. And I didn't really want that because I didn't want to have to chicken wing it the whole time. So I started doing research. I reached out to a bunch of people that I knew that had the stem cell injections done. I called down to Ensenada, Mexico. I called all over, like California, Arizona. I called Colorado, and it basically, I talked to about 20 different places that did the stem cells, and I just kind of put the knowledge together, because it's it's one of those things that's still kind of on the fence, whether it's, like it really works or if it's just kind of a gimmick or this, that, and the other.
Well, not to cut you off, but you have just essentially navigated a Cambodian landmine field, because you hear people going on and on about stem cells. There's so many different types of derivatives and technologies, from amniotic type stuff to PRP to embryonic source to umbilical sourced. And there's just a crazy amount of different technologies, and some of them may or may not work. I think what they're finding is a certain cell derived from, as they say, the ethical procurement of umbilical cords. So you can read into that like whatever you want.
Yeah.
But that have been shown to be extraordinarily successful. There's a clinic down in Panama. They've been down there for 10 years doing a lot of different procedures, and you hear good things. I think overall, the technology will continue to come into play, but then the FDA has been messing with it and shutting some places down as well. So to me, that's just amazing that, from somebody kind of outside the industry, you come in, you call all around the planet and try and find read through all the bullshit.
Yeah.
And go, all right, what sounds legit? Because it's not like you had a gazillion-dollar budget.
No.
And, you got to kind of make it stick,
Yeah.
hopefully on the first one. So did you know what type of stem cell technology they used?
No. So
Did they take your blood?
No. No, they didn't.
Wow. Okay.
So basically, after calling around all over, I could kind of pick out the people who knew what they were talking about and the people who were just selling stuff.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research. I didn't want to just be like, hey, okay, I'm going to let you poke this in my body, because I did find one place, and then I was like, no, I'm not coming here. And so it was
not Tijuana.
It was really no. I didn't want to lose my liver or something. Wake up and be like,
trade.
oh no,
My wrist is fine, but I don't know where my liver is. Common problem.
Yeah. So it was kind of scary because I didn't know a lot, and so I ended up finding a place here in Arizona that they're based out of Colorado, and they seemed like the most knowledgeable people that I talked to. Like it wasn't like they were trying to sell me something. It was, I came to them, and if I wanted to take their product, then that was what it was. At no point in time did they try to upsell their product or, kind of feed me false promises or anything. They were just straight up about it. And I was like, that was what was really cool about the place. He told me that, hey, this is what I can, tell you that, might happen. He's like, I can't guarantee you anything, but this is what I can tell you it will do. And, basically I got exactly that, and the whole time they were straightforward with me, and it worked. I did, I did two different series of the injections. At first I did the amniotic fluid,
yep.
And then the second round we did the umbilical product.
Okay.
And then following those, I did a series of PRP injections as well.
Which would have been your own blood.
Which would have been my own blood. So with all that, the process, like I said, it was a night and day difference between the pain of my wrist.
Wow.
It helped me out tremendously.
Well, I'm telling you, you obviously look like you did your homework, which I think helped. But you got extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Extremely lucky that you navigated that.
Yeah.
You want to give those guys a shout out? Because that's important.
So the place where I got it done was here in Scottsdale, Arizona at Premier Regenerative Stem Cells. They're based out of Colorado, but they're opening an office here. They opened the office here. Really knowledgeable staff, good people to work with. And, they're straightforward.
Is there a specific doc that you worked with?
Dr. Copsio.
Okay.
At Premier Regenerative, and he was straightforward, and I got to thank him because without that my career was pretty much headed downhill.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because we've been working with stem cells 8-9 years. I know the Panama clinic that does this has been open for over 10 years. And still, none of these procedures are, and this is a long story and nothing that we want to probably cover on Inside Enduro about the evil empire of the medical industry and insurance. But, insurance doesn't cover it. Mm-mm. They say it's unproven, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in my opinion, and the opinion of many surgeons who I know and have worked with, they want to keep it. Mm-hmm. At that level, because as long as it's at the unproven witch doctor level, they don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So once it's, they have it across the board that it's proven, then they have to step up and actually pay on the insurance that all of us pay.
Yeah.
So major grievance, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
But no, it's super interesting that you were able to kind of navigate that, get through that, get the treatment with a great clinic. And I tell you, for the people out there with, especially rotator cuff injuries, some knee injuries, tendon injuries, most of these things that typically are avascular, which means low blood supply. And things with low blood supply just have a really difficult time healing. Wrist, scaphoid particularly. Mm-hmm. The carpals just have a very limited blood supply. So if you damage them, unless you're young, healthy, and really lucky, and even sometimes with that, they don't heal.
Yeah, there's a really good chance that they die.
And then you end up with wrist fusions, and I know a couple guys that have those, and Boy, and they push on, but it's a chicken wing.
Yeah, and you know,
Yeah.
like some of the best, like it's a career ender.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a bummer deal because it's like breaking your scaphoid is really common. All you have to do is fall down and just put your hand out in the right way, and it breaks that bone in half.
Yeah.
And it's simple, and it can end your career.
Scary stuff. So I would imagine you have getting through that, right? So you got through it. You climb back on the bike. You fought through, the initial pain and adversity, and now it seems like, you're somewhere where you can manage it at least, and you're on the winning side. And before that, I mean, prior to your wrist, you won a big bike national Hare and Hound round?
No, just
prior to your wrist.
I never won the overall pro, but I won almost all the 250 pro races except for one.
Gotcha. But hadn't had an overall.
Well, not on a national level.
Yeah.
A lot of the local off-road series I had a lot of overall wins on those, but not at a national level.
Yeah, the big national level.
Yeah, this year at the Western Hare Scrambles was my first national overall win.
That's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
So it's like I was looking at it and I'm like, all right, he's we know like local races, guy just cleans house.
Yeah.
Then, you had the 250, national championship, which, now you're riding the Beta 430.
Yeah.
And, so you kind of, put together, wrist is getting better, you're getting stronger, fitness on point, getting diet on point, and then you come out and you have a great weekend there, round one, setting, a good place to set up. So my question is, now you've got to that, I would like to think, we all learn from our experiences of kind of like, and you kind of like led into it with knowing where you can go fast and where you need to check up. Do you think the injury has made you a little different rider?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like before my injury, I didn't really think about things. I didn't think about the bigger picture. I didn't think about the whole race. I just thought about the moment. If somebody passed me, I have to stay with them. If somebody takes off the start, like I have to stay up there. Instead of just riding my own race, I was riding somebody else's race, and it just didn't work out. So after my injury, like it kind of matured me as a rider. Like I know now that, hey, if you can't see, you can't launch it, like check up, go fast where you can go fast, and don't go fast where, something might wreck you, because it's really about the bigger picture. It's not just about that one race, like we're trying to win championships, not, like winning the race is very important, but, being there every round for the whole championship is even more important. And as a rider, I never had that before. I just was like, I was just gunning for the top spot, and it's like now, I have a strategy in mind. Like I'm way smarter about it now, and I feel myself making a lot less mistakes doing that, and just being more smooth on the bike. And
well, I think you're developing what we may call at least some self-preservation, sir.
Yeah, it might be self-preservation. Maybe I'm kind of tuning that part of my brain in. It's just, I mean, it's like, it's the whole picture, really, working with my suspension guy at Beta, getting my suspension to where it's exactly, tailored to my needs, and how I like it. And, so as a team, as a whole team, we've been working really hard to get that, and to get to where I'm comfortable on the bike again. And, Betas, they've, like I said, they've helped me out in every aspect of that. And, so going into 2019, my bike, my Beta feels great. My gear's good. Fly Racing has some of the best feeling gear out there, I think. I got my hydration system, from USWE. I started wearing the fanny pack instead of the backpack. I feel like I have a really short neck, and in some of the pictures, like the backpack, I feel like hits my helmet, and so I switched over to the fanny pack. Just all these little details, they're adding up to the whole picture, and getting to where I'm comfortable. Like my setup's better than it's ever been. I feel really good on it.
Well, you're getting smarter too.
Yeah.
Apparently, but yeah, I guess I'd call it the getting rid of the Ricky Bobby syndrome. You know, it's either win or crash.
Yeah.
And so no, that's good. Well, and that builds longevity. And
Yeah.
I think if you got your skills where they need to be. And I guess it's that knife's blade, right? You need to go fast enough to win.
Yeah.
But not taking, it's all a risk,
Yeah.
right? At all times, but not like teasing the tiger more than you have to, I guess.
Yeah. And I didn't kind of realize what, like going fast where you need to go fast means. I was talking to one of the guys who watched me come by at the round in New Mexico where I broke my wrist. And he was like, holy crap, man. He's like, you were going twice as fast as anybody coming down that section. And thinking back, like, wow, I didn't need to be going that fast. Like if I would have just kind of toned her down a little bit, I probably would have, jumped off that thing and just rolled down the other side and kept going. Yeah. But no, I was going way faster than I needed to go in a spot where I didn't need to go that fast. So, like that was one thing I learned, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that with, again, having that objective vision. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if it's almost kind of like a race, it's like when you have people that are talented, willing to go really fast, like, I think there's a window there. Like, do they become objective before they become completely destroyed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like starting to go, all right, well, I got this. But by the time they learn kind of, how to tactfully, mellow, not take it, I guess take it down a notch, but
kind of hone in their skills.
Yeah. Hone their skills of when to check up and when it's important to go fast and how to race your own race, and that's where it's kind of, I think the racing for me that's been the most interesting point. It's really been a learning journey, because I remember an interview with, again, another Supercross guy, Chad Reed, and he would say is like, hey, I can't tell you how many times I've gone out on a practice track and see guys who can just lay down times. Uh-huh. Like, they practice unbelievably.
Yeah.
He goes, but I've never been paid for practice.
No.
I've been paid for winning.
To win races, yeah.
And then he goes, then there's the other group, or I guess maybe some do both, but then there's the other group of guys that when they come out to perform, they perform.
Yeah.
It's right, and it wins.
Yeah.
And these are guys, and I guess his point was like, yeah, I may have been slow during the week, and these guys are, tuning me up on the practice times. But when it came with the stress, the adrenaline, where to push it, how to hit your marks with the fans and everything going on.
Yeah. It's a whole different ball game when you line up on the starting line. It's not the same as just going out and practicing, when you're out practicing, if you make a little mistake, it's not that big of a deal. If you make the mistakes in the race, it's the difference between first, second, third, fourth or fifth. There's a lot of people, like you said, that can practice really well, but when it comes to racing, they just can't race very well. So you have to. It's the whole picture. It's tough, and I've been learning that. To be smart as a racer too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the guys, the kind of the legions of the somewhat normal, fun-seeking, trail riding, recreational, amateur racing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that kind of comes back to, having the opportunity to learn some of these more intimate details of riding, racing, etc. And one thing as a newcomer, or semi-newcomer, it's like, I think I started riding 10, 11 years old on a DT 100 Yamaha, red and black, steel tank, headlight, blinkers. As a kid, took all that stuff off myself, and just started trying to rally around with it, and, it's like if you had a vacant lot, that was good enough. And, you kind of, you move on through that and different bikes and, you come up with it. And then learning, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to really learn anything solid. And that goes back to like, you get in with a group of guys, you don't want to be last. So if it's a gnarly, rocky section, and gnarly is relative to anyone's skill level, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can have a basic trail that's gnarly to somebody else. Yeah. But, instead of riding it maybe even how they're capable of riding, they go into dog paddle mode when they don't need to, and because they're just fighting. I mean, they're just like salmon, sperm.
Yeah, trying to get up, trying to get up through it.
Everybody's trying to get over the fence, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of caught on to that as I got back in it, being older and having the other, sports experiences that I had, at a high level. And I was like, all right, who's out there for education? Because, obviously everyone has trainers. So like one of the first things I looked at was just like, well, off-road, like who teaches any off-road? And I actually found Jimmy Lewis did a couple-day class down in Nevada. And I like kind of hounded him. I'm like, no, I want like, legit high-level stuff. Yeah. And he kept just like kind of pushing me off going, well, no, we just do one thing. And as I read his thing, like his class included adventure bikes, 1190s to, basically the most basic XR 200, and it's all the same class. Yeah. And I'm just like, how is this going to benefit me? I'm trying to like look for a higher level. So nonetheless, I went down there and it was definitely a good experience. I learned some basic things and got some ideas, but it really doesn't, you really don't get like how complicated it is until you kind of do the stuff and then you come back home, and it may take 6 months to a year as that stuff kind of filters out, as you start to pick it up and understand why and what. And then after that, another big shout out to Charlie and Catherine Roberts out the Trials Training Center. You see all the people doing hard enduro, and you're like, well, who's all the best hard enduro guys? Well, they're all great trials riders. Yeah. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out like, okay, I want to be good at hard enduro, I should get a trials bike. Yeah. Well, that's pretty easy. You can find one used for $2,000. Yeah. So you go get a trials bike and you start banging around the yard, and you're like, oh yeah, that's making me better. And you're like, maybe, maybe not. Yeah. And then, so I had to think, all right, well, if you see these Tony Bow and Schmage and all these great guys, and Jarvis and Paul Bolton, and, these just like killer trials riders, you're like, well, they all learned from somewhere. Yeah. Either, from other trials riders, as a youth, whatever. My point was, there was probably some type of, if there wasn't a structure, there's probably some game plan. Like, okay, this is a trials bike. Here are the dynamics of a trials bike. And here's kind of your list of things to do. Just like, keeping your elbows up, and how you place your position on the foot peg, seat, et cetera, for off-road or motocross. I figured there had to be, some, let's just say, basic rule book for trials. Mm-hmm. And so I looked all around the country, and really the only one that stood out was a trials training center way out in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And you're like, God, I live in Montana. Yeah. That's like a 3-day drive. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, each way. Each way, yeah. So, long story short, they have some rental bikes out there, and, for time and gas money, I mean, it was just about as effective to just fly out there and use their bikes, and went and spent 3 days and blown away. Like in the first 10 minutes, we hadn't gone outside yet. He just showed us some things on a trials bike. And I'm like, well, all right, that was already worth coming here, because it was obvious that I knew absolutely nothing about trials bikes.
Yeah.
And those guys, at least for that 3-day course, gave, an incredible insight to at least the basics of it. And then, then I worked on a little more, and then obviously riding with you, big props out to Mike Dam, Taylor Robert, Max Gersten, Nick, some of the other boys. Like, you start doing some trials, and then you start trying to emulate what Mike Dam is doing, and even another buddy, Rob Farrington, comes down from Montana, and he's been doing it for quite a while, and you start emulating what these guys are doing, and then there's like, all right, there was the basic level, which you need, very important, and then taking that on to the next levels, and then you just realize, like, holy shit, this is a lifelong thing in itself.
Yeah.
To get to any reasonable level as far as technique, and so many intricacies in itself.
Yeah. I think the trials bike, I got a trials bike from Beta USA as part of my training program, and I think it's helped my technical riding out. I mean, tenfold. Like, I find myself going through like rocky sections to where I would instantly just put my feet out and doggy paddle through them, to whereas now I'm standing up on the foot pegs and, picking my way through the rocks. And it's a totally different game when you get on a trials bike. You see videos of Tony Bow, like, hopping across telephone poles on his rear wheel.
Sick.
And you're like, oh, that's got to be the, because it's a light bike. Well, a trials bike still weighs like 100 and something pounds, 160 pounds or something. I don't know exactly the number, but
it's not a mountain bike.
It's not a mountain bike, So you get on it and you try to go over a little rock and you almost go over the handlebars. You're like, what the heck? Like, I should just be like hopping on my rear wheel across this, And it's humbling, really humbling, but it's so good for your cross training. And I'm not a very good trials rider, to say the least, but I'm getting better. Yeah. And so I've noticed though, like, since I started riding trials, I fall down a lot less on my dirt bike. Yeah. My boss, Tim Pilge, said that. He's like, when you ride trials, he's like, you'll fall down less on your dirt bike. And it's 100% true. You kind of hone in your balance a lot more with them. And it just crosses right over into the dirt bike when you get on it.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, we've ridden together on trials, and I'm somewhere behind you, trying to catch up. And it's come a long ways, thanks to guys like, yourself and Mike and Rob particularly, helping me out. But it's kind of funny in life. Like, I felt pretty pleased with myself. I'm like, all right, I'm starting to do some bigger stuff, and, feeling pretty stoked. Like, hey, it's going good. But boy, now I'm in a stage, I call it the Drunken Toddler stage, because now I've like moved up to some significant features with significant consequences. Not dropping off like a 4-foot ledge, but dropping off like a 6-foot ledge. Yeah. And all of a sudden, that exponentially, the same form you had at 4 foot, some reason, can just go out the window, because at 6 foot, you're fucking scared. Yeah. And even though like you fall back and it's not a 230 pound bike, it's still like 150, 60 pounds coming back at you. Yeah. And you don't know exactly like where your feet are going to land in, if you're going to land, I mean, you kind of learn like how to eject and hope to land on your feet. And usually that happens. But yeah, I tell you, I had a couple of weeks ago where like I was taking bark off for a couple of days. Like I couldn't lose my skin fast enough. Yeah. I don't know how many Arizona lizards made a meal off of my skin and meat off the rocks. But yeah. And it's, I tell you what, I never thought I'd put so much money in replacement parts for a trials bike. Oh yeah. But I've been pretty hard on the poor thing.
I've broken levers, bent my handlebars, fenders, fork tubes, everything on this trials bike. But like it's helping me, so I'm gonna keep getting after it.
Yeah, we were out just the other day, and there's kind of a rock that has a wonky, wobbly big boulder on top, and I'd watched you fall off it several times and get it, and just fight with it, and so I was like, all right, it's time. I need to step up to that. You were fighting with that, and so hit it, and like first I got up on it, and I was like, yes, I'm up on it, and then the second time got up, and it's just a weird angle, and it teetered, and off I went. Broke my throttle body, etc. And I'm just like, guess that's part of the game, I mean,
if you're not falling, you're not trying.
That's right. I try to limit that, but I tell you what, it's a rough go, and I appreciate, Mike Dam, man. He's got a lot of patience for me, I think
and he's got a lot of parts for you too.
He sells parts. I'd like to say he's kind of like Costco. Like you can't go out with him and not spend $100.
Yep.
But honestly, it's a lot more than that, because unfortunately I blew up a trials bike.
Yeah.
Were you there?
I was there. Yeah, actually.
Did you actually witness it? I can't remember if you were somewhere else.
I was on the other side of the rock, and I was actually getting my water pack to put it on so we could go to the next spot. And all of a sudden I hear this 2-stroke trials bike just wound to the max. I mean, just on the limiter, full pin for at least 25 seconds. And that's no exaggeration.
It was a long 25 seconds.
And I'm like, well, what's going to happen? I mean, it's not shutting off. It's not shutting off. It's still not shutting off. And then pretty soon it just done.
That was it.
Yep. And that was all she wrote.
Yeah. I mean, what happened, I dropped it off about a 6-foot boulder. It had hit the throttle, pulled the cable out of the carburetor. And when the things are full tilt, you can hit the kill switch all you want, and they're not going to stop. And I tried that frantically, because I knew, talk about short windows.
Yeah.
And I was frantically going for it, and I was trying to find the cable, and it's just like, it was like one of those shitty game shows, dude. Like, you're like watching the clock tick down, and you're like, I'm not going to make it.
No.
I'm not going to make it. And the thing just like, and that was it.
Yeah.
And totally seized it, ruined the cylinder, ruined the piston. That was like $1,000 deal.
Yeah, that was definitely a rough one.
Yeah, and then on top of it, not a lot of sympathy with this group, because everyone kind of pissed off, and I pushed the bike a good 3 miles.
Well, first off, he pushed the bike 3 miles, but he carried the bike up the hill. I've never seen somebody pick up a motorcycle and carry it up a hill. This guy just picked it up and said, I'm taking my toys and I'm going home.
Well, it's lighter than an enduro bike, but it's always fun to pick up an enduro bike too. And I'd finished off. It was my first year at Romaniacs, and made it to the finish of a successful run. And I mean, dude, it was the biggest battle of my life. The first time over there was basically me just surviving. I mean, like a fight for my life, like getting my ass kicked, and just like, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to time bar. And it was close, I got to be honest. And I got to that Red Bull finish with the big hill climb and all that kind of stuff. And they had one box right at the finish line where you had to ride up it. It's probably about, 8 feet in the air. And you had to pivot turn and go down the other side, and then that was the end. So I pulled up the bike on the box, and there's 1,000 people there. And I'm just like, I was so, the adrenaline after 5 days, the adrenaline was so crazy. I got off the bike, I look at the crowd, everyone's looking at me, and instead of pivoting 90 degrees, I just picked the whole 300 up, rotated it, like a crane, set it down and got on it, and everybody went bonkers.
Oh yeah.
So, hey man, it's like someone told me a long time ago, if you can't be good, you at least better be tough.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So we're working on that for sure. But, it's funny too, on the education side, just kind of finishing that off. It makes me happy to see that there's some different entities out there that are kind of taking the baton to, to help, teach people and offer. And hopefully we'll probably have some of those people on subsequent podcasts. Like one guy you have down here, Destry Abbott, does his D8 training, and seems like he's frequently doing 3-day classes. And I haven't checked into like exactly how much they are, but I just can't imagine. It's like if you're someone who likes to ride, and it's not just, it's great rubbing, keeping up with your buddies. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. That's definitely a positive thing. But I tell you, if you can learn a certain amount of skills to just make the trail go by easier with fun, I have a hard time assessing how much that's worth.
So I actually did a class with Destry. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, at one of the races in California. My wife signed me up for it. I think it was like $125 for that class. I don't know specific details on all the prices, but
just like a couple hours or something, or
yeah, it was just like half a day with maybe it's a little bit longer than that. There was like probably 6 or 8 of us out there, and it was really cool. Like we worked on a couple of sections, and like Ivan Ramirez was actually there at the time, and you watch him go through it, and then it was your turn to go through it, and then Destry would watch you, and it was kind of cool, because you would get his input on what he thought about how you rode that section, and going back to, having somebody kind of give you feedback of how you're riding is huge, and the
right person.
Yeah. And so like I really benefited a lot from that class because, just certain little things, like, pointing your toes in when you're going around a corner instead of having them pointed out. Like, that saves your ACL right there. If you have your toes pointed in when you're going around a corner, you dab your foot, your knee will fold if your toes are pointed in. But if they're pointed out and you dab your foot, there's a chance that you blow your ACL.
And your MCL.
right there, like it's
how much is that worth? Is that worth $120?
I think so.
I would imagine so.
Like, just little tips and tricks, just help you along the way. That stuff's it's almost priceless if you think about all the money you spend. Like say traveling to a race. I don't know if a lot of people run moose tubes when they go to desert races, but I know some don't. But if you drive 8 hours to California, spend $100 on an entry fee, gas in your bike, time, effort, gas for the car, and you get a flat tire, what's a $180 moose tube? That seems pretty small cost. Like, if you're going to go that far, you might as well go all the way, and just kind of, save yourself the trouble of getting a flat halfway through the race. Just don't skip those steps, like all that stuff adds up to a successful race.
Yeah. Funny enough, I learned that kind of early as well, and I had some battles with, with some of the guys I rode with. Cause as any sport, I think the moto guys, especially the guys out riding trails, they kind of hang in their own groups, they're kind of like
little cliques.
They're like warring tribes. Right. So if you got one guy who's kind of like the lead chipmunk, then, everyone kind of follows suit, it seems, whether they're doing, tubes or, tubeless or whatever. And I don't know, just doing my research, I came across the mooses and hell, I'd never even heard of them. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, all right, and I think this is the way to go. Because just like you said, like you start putting this training in and you're putting this effort and you're buying bike parts and you're trying to get prepped up like you're somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, and you get there and you have a flat. And like guys that tell me, they're like, well, it's really easy to fix. You just use a plug, I'm like, dude, have you seen the times in these races? It's like, if it takes you 60 seconds to fix your tire, that's too long.
That's too long.
So I would rather deal with maybe not having my tire pressure exactly where I want it to basically have to remove that component of failure from the equation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I remember one of my first races in Montana, I put in a couple mooses. It took me hours. I had my wife helping. I think I made up some new curse words. I'm pretty free with them anyways, but like I made some shit up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like some type of caveman cursory language.
Yeah.
And we got those bastards on. And I'm pretty sure I was running 20 PSI front and back. And it was a rough ass race.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my suspension dialed in. And I don't know, it may have just been stock, you know, suspension, maybe springs. And I mean, it was the most brutal race ever because I'm just like getting jackhammered. But I was like, well, I'm not running tubes. And here I am at 20 PSI and I don't have 3 days to change these tires.
Yeah.
So I just kind of rolled with it. And then obviously as the education has come along, you kind of become, you know, almost a aficionado of mooses, you know? So like playing with all the mooses and overseas, for me, the Mifo is probably the best out of Germany, like right out of the box, just unbelievable texture, quality control. But, you know, it's just those little things that people don't understand, that you can take two tires that are exactly the same nomenclature of having, you know, like a Dunlop 18120, and then you take a Pirelli. Well, the Pirelli in the exact same size probably has a 25 to 30% larger casing, more volume. So the same moose that would work in the Dunlop
doesn't quite work in the Pirelli.
Doesn't work at all. You know, in the Pirelli, you're going to basically come off the rim and then using double rim locks or single rim locks. And so now it's pretty cool. By going through all the trial and error, I can kind of tailor the bike to hard enduro or, you know, more, you know, faster off-road. And then with that, you know, it feels good. And I was just, you know, you go online, which I try not to just because there's so much horrible information. You know, guys are just like, oh, I can't use mooses because of the dead feeling. You're like, are you that good? I mean, to me, it's just consistent as consistent. You know, it's like if you know how the bike's going to react, then you can deal with it. But I think you kind of went all over to tubes.
So
inadvertently.
Yeah. So our beta race team, we're sponsored by Nitro Moose and Kenda Tires. So between the two of them, we have like a pretty good setup, and I've really learned like how they feel, I guess, in a sense. And talking about the dead feeling in tubes, I've kind of battled with my team manager about this a little bit. He's you know, Rodney Smith. He's, like I said, he has a lot of knowledge, and he likes running tubes. I don't know why, but he does. And I don't like it. You know, I rode tubes for a couple days and I just didn't like it. Maybe that dead feel, I think I like a little bit better than the springy feeling of the tube.
The pneumatic feel.
Yeah. You know, like I just kind of, I got our setup with the mooses, and I know how they work and I know how they feel, and I like it, you know. I'm happy with it. And I know no matter if I go to the moto track, if I go, you know, out to the desert, I'm not going to get a flat tire.
Yeah.
Like that's one equation I can rule out of the day. Because if, you know, not only going to the races, but even if you drive out to the moto track to go practice and you get a flat, you just wasted one of your training days right there. Or, you know, you have to stop and change it. And, you know, it's just kind of a pain.
Yeah.
So, you know, like
I could probably see his point. You know, I mean, if he was racing tubes, you know, for so long, and he's obviously, no one's saying that you can't be successful on tubes. It's like, no, I think if you rode tubes, you'd get used to it and you'd quit bitching, you know, whatever, you know, and you just do it, and it wouldn't even be a thought. But to me, the equation changes with the potential for failure.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, this feels like this. I can handle it. I'm used to it. And I know for a fact that I'm never getting a flat.
Never. Yeah. It's just
hard to argue.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of a good feeling knowing that, hey, I ruled that factor out. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. I went as far as our local shop that does some sponsorship for us, Summit Motorsports in Bozeman, Montana. Jeff and Brandon, he's a awesome parts guy. It's like, I've noticed that coming here, it's like we get spoiled back home with like the parts guys that really know their shit, and keep the right stuff in stock, come into a place like, hey, I need a shift lever. Oh, we got to order it. A shift lever?
Yeah.
Everything here is rock.
Yeah.
And there's like 20 models of bike and they all use the same one.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean you don't have one?
Should have 7 of them.
Exactly. So I went in as part of our, they help us with some sponsorship. So I went in and they bought a Rabiconda or the Moose version of it and kind of took their tech guys through, how to efficiently change a Moose.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of guys they're getting the idea. It's like, actually I changed the front tire on the trials bike, our tubes.
Yeah.
And I changed the tube the other day and I was just like, I don't miss this.
No.
Because I've gotten so good at changing Mooses that it's like, I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easy.
Yeah. But, and unless you're new at it, as I experienced my, the first couple races I did off road, like changing a Moose tube, if you don't know what you're doing, takes 4 men and a small boy.
Yeah.
And, usually a lot of curse words and sometimes failure. I had 2 fail on me because I didn't get the slack out of it and I broke the bead, you know? And so you have to learn the right technique to change one, because you can still mess it up and then that will lead to failure.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I realize it's probably, a few steps below like creating nuclear fusion, but I tell you what, I could almost bet that it's equally frustrating.
Yeah.
Broken beads, sweat. I saw that from I think it was a guy that was maybe from Dunlop changing tires like a, factory Supercross. And he had 2 YouTube videos. And one of his things that always stuck with me was like, if you're sweating, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I sweat like a pig. So I'm like, all right, that's a good test.
Yeah.
If I can do this without sweating, and then here we are, typically tires off in 60 seconds and on in probably literally 120 seconds, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
All the time is cleaning your axles and, prepping the tire, and that's where all your time goes. But no, it's been a heck of an education. And again, I think, that's what we look to offer, in our podcasts as well, is, some of the, technical sides, basically, helping riders, become better riders, just kind of get a different view of what's going on in the world of enduro. And I always kind of laugh, when we looked at, naming this company, or checking out a lot of different stuff. And I just like the word enduro for some reason. And for me, it means a lot. Like, it's not just like technically, enduro, which is like historically this, planning out a route with certain times and, that's like the old school enduro. To me, enduro is almost like life, like enduring on, like, pushing on, pressing on. And I laugh because like when you're overseas and you have people with limited English, you can be in the shittiest situation. Like, it's gnarly, it's muddy, people are covered in shit, and just having a fight at it. And then someone will just like kind of gleefully say, we make enduro.
Yeah.
We make enduro. Yeah, we make enduro. And you're like, yeah, hell yeah. I mean, that's what it's about. And, so hopefully we can kind of help bring that spirit, and show people to kind of have that life and that kind of fun of, again, it's really, it's adventure, whether you're doing a Hare and Hound that maybe you've like raced parts of the valleys, etc., but you don't know what's around each corner, and that's what's kind of alluring, and exciting about it.
Yeah. Well, and like, that's one of the things about off-road racing is, people don't realize what it actually is. Like, I race Hare and Hounds, for instance, and the reason I race it is because, to me, I believe Hare and Hound's one of the most gnarly races in the world. I mean, aside from Dakar, I think Hare and Hounds are probably one of the like all around toughest, because, you know, like I've done Baja and, you know, different races like that where, you know, you get to go pre-ride the course. You know, granted, Baja is a gnarly race too. I'm not taking anything from that, but you kind of know, you have an idea of where you're going. You have an idea of what's coming up, you know, if you did your homework for it. A Hare and Hound, you have, you know, the top riders in the desert battling over stuff you've never been across, you know, like that in itself is a whole different race, you know, like the speeds, navigating the terrain, reading, you know, like, you know, following the course markings, stuff like that. Like that's gnarly. You know, you're going as fast as you possibly can across something you've never been across. Like that's
scary shit.
It's scary, you know?
That's what's scary.
You know, not taking anything away from the other races, but to me, I believe that's the toughest, you know, it's like a true test to who's the best that day. You know, It's not like, I grew up racing motocross. My parents owned 2 motocross tracks in Idaho. And, you know, you can practice a moto track every week and pretty much become one of the fastest people there. You know, Hare and Hounds, you don't get to go practice the course. You know, somebody lays it out, you know, the previous weeks, and you come race it. So it's who's the best that day, you know, which is really exciting about it. And, you know, that's why I love it.
Yeah. Well, I would agree. I think for everyone, there's varying degrees in gnarliness. I think the motorcycle from Supercross to National Hare and Hound to Hard Enduro to, you know, a lot of the different racing venues and styles. I mean, they all are some of the most physically demanding sports. I mean, period. Mm-hmm. And then the gnarliness factor, I think, is just a very wide spectrum. You know, it's like, there's no doubt the Hare and Hound is gnarly. Like for myself, you know, when I look at them, I've like, and I don't know, maybe it's my age, I've kind of classified it. Like I'm becoming less interested in races that when I get finished, that I feel like I need a kidney transplant for 3 days.
Yeah.
Cause that means it was rough, like, and fast. I mean, just like high frequency, making my organs into some type of gelatinous liquid. And then waiting for them to like form normal organs again.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then obviously, you know, you got like, you know, when we do Romaniacs, like you're seeing stuff that is literally what the fuck. I mean, Martin's crazy. And people have said it, you know, when you come where you have to jump across a waterfall and there's nobody there, you're in the dark forest. If you don't make the gap, you're going to fall 25 feet into a chasm. It's slick, dark, nobody's there. You have no idea even where the fuck you are. I mean, you have a GPS, but you're still 60 miles from help or wherever you're going to end. And you're just like, obviously only a country like Romania can get away with doing things like this with liability. Yeah. You know, but, you know, that's a whole gnarliness in itself. But, you know, that's kind of more of on the long-term endurance, long-term sketchiness. However, you know, you typically at the end, you know, your kidneys are still there just because you haven't been, you know, since the trails, a lot of them are brand new and weren't there at the beginning of the day at all. Because basically what Martin will do is he'll go through with a lot of their guys on a trials bike and he'll climb things with a trials bike and just go, all right, well, if I can do this by riding, pulling, pushing a trials bike, guys like Jarvis, Walker, Bolton, all those guys, they should be able to ride it. Mm-hmm. And I've been there where those, say, top 10 guys are sitting around going, hey, we need to go to Martin and tell him that this is bullshit. Like, someone's going to die. Yeah. Like, really going to die. Like, and I saw it happen, you know, and they're just like, Martin, like, hey, man, we're all about pushing the limits. But you're putting shit in there that's going to get one of us killed. Yeah. You know, and Martin's just kind of like blank stare, like, it's the truck. You know, and that's what kind of makes it interesting. So I have an appreciation. There's no doubt, man. It's like I can appreciate it when I'm in a sand wash and a guy, well, you did it actually out at the Buckeye Hare Scramble, man. You came by me like your ass was on fire, and don't worry, there was no thought about chasing. I was just like, God damn, he's going fast.
Yeah.
But I have appreciation for it all. I think anyone that literally, throws a leg up over a bike and goes out and has an honest go at it, is like, there's something to be said for it, and I can appreciate it all. We all have different levels of gnarliness, and there's no doubt, man, the Hare and Hound stuff, that's some fast, like the bomb start. That's just almost like maniacal. I mean,
it like everybody kind of has this idea of what a Hare and Hound is, because most people have seen the start, and the start they're pretty crazy. It's 300 riders lined up aiming for one trail, about a mile away.
Sperm.
Yeah, it's just you shooting for the first spot, but Hare and Hounds are so diverse, because you have 80-mile-an-hour valleys, but then you have first gear, rocky, technical, like ridges with waterfall canyons, and just like it's every variety of racing there is. So you have to set your bike up to be able to go fast across the whoops, but also to be able to go fast in the rocks. Like, it's just so diverse like that. It's first, second gear to fifth gear. Like it's
funny.
really cool.
It's funny you say that, because I mean, obviously everyone's, perception is their own truth, right?
Yeah.
And so all I remember, like, there's one coming up. I believe you're going to it this weekend, the Johnson Valley. I did that a couple years ago, and all I remember is just like the stupid fast sections, because I just couldn't believe how fast guys were going. I'm just like, Montana, used to single track and mountain trails, and you're just not used to seeing, like, for speed for that period of time and holding it open, for that longevity. But then once you got into like the rockier, nasty stuff, to me, that's kind of felt like home. So it didn't even like register, and then all of a sudden you're getting passed in the sand, and then all of a sudden you're passing everybody, in the more technical, gnarly stuff. But like when I come through at the end of it, I'm just like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just like, holy shit, that was just like retarded fast.
Yeah.
So it's just like, holy crap, so it's like a different viewpoint. But, I get it. Like, you got the bomb start, obviously it funnels down, goes into some of the tighter canyons, and so it encompasses, a lot of the riding skills for sure. But yeah, it's a cool series. Cool series.
There's like a lot of diversity in the riding for sure.
Well, right on. So you've got, this weekend is Johnson Valley. And I take it you've raced that one before.
Yeah. Actually, there's a few different clubs that put on events down there in Johnson Valley, and usually they all do a really good job. So it depends on which club it is, that puts on the event. But yeah, Johnson Valley is one of my favorite. There's a lot of fast contenders there, because a lot of those guys that race that series, they're from there, and that's where a lot of them ride. So it makes for some good battles.
So is that the same series as the one that you just done?
No.
So it's a different series.
Yeah. So the AMA Western Hare Scrambles is the one I just won. And then the National Hare and Hound Association is the other series.
So they're two separate series.
Yep, two different series. Yeah.
And then are you contracted to race both series?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So all hands on deck. So then that's the first round of that series as well.
Yep. So upcoming is the first round, and then so it's both of them are season openers. So
feeling good, feeling strong.
Yeah. I got a lot of good energy going into these, first rounds, from the Buckeye Hare Scrambles to the Hare Scrambles at Prairie City. I'm feeling really confident, feeling strong. Equipment's on point. All the stars are aligning, so it's just, just up to me to put it all together.
Right on, man. Well, I tell you what, believe it or not, we've just logged about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I know you got a riding session later today that you got to knock out, and then you're leaving to Johnson Valley tomorrow?
Yep. Gonna go put in some time on the turn tracks here in a little bit, and then get ready to leave out of here tomorrow.
Pack up the circus and head to California.
It seems like, I was driving out to the moto track last night, and I looked over at my wife and I was like, doesn't it feel like we just were in this situation, in the van, going riding or coming back? Like, it's like, sometimes it's just like a revolving door.
Dude, it's called time travel.
Dude, yeah, it's crazy about how much, I was looking at my schedule, and, like, one weekend I'm in California, the next weekend I'm in Idaho, the next weekend I'm back in California, the next weekend we're in Texas, then we're in Bellingham, Washington, and then we're in Oklahoma. It's like it's all over. I mean, I'm curious to see how many miles I put on my van this year. Like,
yeah, that's massive. That's a real challenge too, I think, when you have to do those long drives. I drove out to TKO this year to compete, and it was 3 days, essentially each way, unless you wanted to,
jam right through.
Yeah, drive nonstop, So I figured, hey, I'll put, 12, 13, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And just kind of planned it out, having a mountain bike in the back. So I think I stopped in Missouri. There's the K Trail, which is like 240 miles long, like an old railroad track. And I didn't do 240 miles, but
just stopped off for a quick 240. No big deal.
240. Well, actually, it was 480 when I came back. Yeah.
No big deal.
No, maybe 20, maybe 10, maybe 10 each way. And it was just great, to kind of stretch out the legs. But, that's a, and hopefully love to have you back.
Yeah.
To talk more, because there's just so much. Like, you start looking at that stuff and you're like, all right, how you basically tailor and transition your training through the week with travel, when you talk diet, your workout, and then how much rest before the race, and then, sitting in a car, for
12,
14, 16, 18 plus hours, that's something that probably needs to be attended to, either getting out just to move some blood, et cetera. So you don't show up all wrung out.
From the drive.
Yeah.
The whole, like, figuring out the whole program is huge. Like, traveling takes it out of you.
You don't show up delirious.
Yeah. So that's all stuff I'm figuring out as I go still. I'm trying to equate all that in my program.
Well, cool, man. Well, I'm looking forward. There's a possibility. Turns out I may be in Johnson Valley this weekend.
Yeah.
So come, I don't know, watch, race.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Hell, who knows?
Come check it out if you're in the Southern California area, Stearns Valley this weekend.
Well, we're kind of used to it. We've raced the King of Motos a couple times, and this Johnson Valley one once.
Yeah.
And so we got little familiarity with it for sure.
Yeah.
But man, I wish you the best of luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Ride smart, ride safe.
Yeah.
We want to see you healthy, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. That wraps up. That's over 2 hours with Inside Enduro. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And again, like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. We'll bring more to you. So that's all we got. Later, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, guys. See you later.